Hello, and welcome to another episode of The End of the Search. I don't know what I'm going to call this particular video right now, but this is a question that is being asked. I figure a title will come up later. And the question says, Nick, things get desperate when you're limited on all sides by the apparent movement you want to make. And what's desperate is when the anxiety is such that you don't even realize what's happening or what to do. If anxiety is what appears, anxiety must be experienced, I suppose. Would you give me some advice on this point? Perhaps you will tell me, who experiences anxiety? Who feels fear? And I don't find anything there. But why doesn't the identification dissolve? The mind is the one that decides, right? This I can do nothing about it at this point. This idea that we don't have free will would apply, right? We can only have the will to surrender to not knowing at every moment and trust, practicing the famous forgiveness. Okay. I'm going to share with you first of all the answer that I wrote to him, and then I'm going to elaborate on that question a bit further. So I said, I better make a video about your question. However, I would quickly tell you the following. When you talk about anxiety and say, who experienced anxiety? In this case, that is not what I would say because there's still the identification with the I that is searching for that I that experienced anxiety. What I will tell you is that anxiety is simply a sensation that means absolutely nothing. It's the mind that labels it as anxiety. And on top of that label, it begins to add stories like, this is bad, I don't want to feel this, what could happen to me, and so on. But if you live the experience without projecting any kind of meaning onto it, it's just another sensation which, like all sensations, appears and then disappears. And so it is with thoughts. But all of this, when you do it from the position of that individual, is what keeps you running in circles. Okay. Let's go back to the question now, and let's just take it chunk by chunk, so to speak, because I think we need to look at this. The person says, things get desperate when you're limited on all sides by the apparent movement you want to make. Well, things don't get desperate. It's that you're identified with the mind that is somehow translating your present moment experience, and it adds on top of that how life should be. And because the mind is telling you that, you're trying to find a way out. But all that there is the present experience, and that's it. And without any interpretation, without giving it any meaning, it's just life. That is all it. But you still look at it from the perspective of the separate individual who's making a judgment on how life should be, and that's when he gets stuck. Then he continues. And what's desperate is when anxiety is such that you don't even realize what's happening or what to do. Well, the feeling may be happening, okay, that the mind labels as anxiety, and yes, it could feel, it may have that texture, but it's just that. If you do not try to give it any meaning or anything, it's just a sensation. Many people have that kind of sensation. But some people, that sensation can be so dramatic because it adds the story with the mind, and to others, it's just a sensation, that's what it is. An example would be, I've heard this many years ago, but it's a good example. Let's say somebody who just had an operation, a heart operation, heart surgery, and the person, of course, is very attached to his sense of identity and is afraid of dying and everything. So all of a sudden, he gets that operation and he feels better, he feels fine. The operation went very well. However, when those palpitations may seem to occur, uneven palpitations, I don't know what word to use, the person could enter in panic. Oh my God, what does it mean? Is there something with my heart? You see, just because the heart is racing a little bit more than usual in some occasions. Well, if you take someone who practices sports, that person have the same palpitations, same sensations, the same ones, but in its mind is not the story about, oh my God, what does it mean? It's going to die or something, you see? So they're both are having the same sensations, but one interprets it one way and the other one interprets it another way. Well, in this particular case, the person is talking about all the anxiety and all the thing that he's experiencing, and look how its mind interpretation is really the problem here. Always because it's identified with the sense of identity, which is what these videos are about. However, he's going to talk about this, so let's continue. Then it says, if anxiety is what appears, anxiety must be experienced, I suppose. Would you give me some advice on that point? Okay, this statement seems to me more as a resignation, you know. Well, if anxiety is what appears, I guess must be experienced, I suppose. No, it's not the attitude that, well, it must be experienced. It's just that it's just an experience. But again, the label anxiety and what it may mean to this person is where the problem is. The problem is not in the feeling or the sensation. It's just, but if it's seen through, not a problem. But if I get into, oh my God, what's going to happen to me? What does it mean? I'm going crazy. Or, you know, oh my God, look at my life. Everything is falling apart. Things are not going the way I think they should, of course. You see, all of that is what creates the anxiety. Otherwise, imagine that you see life falling apart. Well, you don't even label it falling apart. You see it as, okay, this is what's happening. You see the difference? So then he continues. Perhaps you will tell me, who experiences anxiety? Who feels fear? Again, this is when I said, yeah, to a certain extent, that's a question to ask. But this question is being asked from the perspective of the individual who's trying to solve the issue. You see? When we do the investigation, who is feeling anxiety is not to see if I can solve it or if I can get rid of it. It's just an honest investigation. Right now, let's say that a feeling, a sensation, anxiety is happening. And I ask, okay, who's feeling that? Again, it's just simply to notice that, okay, a feeling is happening, but can I find the one who's feeling it? Because the one who's feeling it, I can find it. The only thing I can find is a thought that is saying, I am feeling anxiety. But if that thought wasn't there, all that there would be, it would be just experience. And not even call it anxiety, you know, it's just, this is where the words are pointing to, but eventually they become short. You know, words cannot, you will never answer the question who's feeling or not feeling anxiety, but the recognition and the experience that life is, that is what automatically happens when the mind is not identified with its content. And this is pointing to that. It's not to try to hold on to a person that now understands this. You see, there's no person. All there is what is, you know. And continue, it says, and I don't find anything there, but why doesn't the identification dissolve? Because the I that is trying to find something there or claim that doesn't find anything there is still the identification. You see? The words which are limiting anyway are just pointing to see if there's a recognition by no one, by the way, that there's no individual. That's the things that happen with Nisargadatta Mahara when he says just rest in I am. We try to do it with the mind. Okay, I'm going to rest in I am to see if I can find who I am. No, resting I am is what is happening right now when the mind is not in the way. You see, it's not about me resting in the I am so that I get to know who I am. It's that I am. Right now you cannot not be. Right now you are. But the mind, identified with the sense of identity, is trying to do the investigation, and this is the click that brings so much frustration, and it's confusing to people. If I ask you, resting I am, like Nisargadatta would say, it's just simply pointing to the fact that I am. Right now, if you don't identify with any thoughts, what remains? Now, don't try to conceptualize this. I'm pointing to the obvious. If you don't identify with any thought, what remains is I am. But not I am personal or person, is the experience of just being, which has no problem with any kind of feelings or sensations that may appear. It wouldn't make an issue about anxiety. Wouldn't even call it anxiety. It's just simply beingness, and in beingness, this texture appears, and resting in beingness, there's no problem. But when beingness is colored by thought, that's when the problem comes in. And the issue here is the person is identified with a sense of identity, which is I thought. And now from that place is trying to, it says, I don't find anything there, but why doesn't the identification dissolve? The identification doesn't have to dissolve because in reality there's no one. However, I understand within the context we appear to be, I want to disidentify, but actually it's very simple. You don't have to disidentify. Don't believe any thoughts about anything, especially about this individual who's trying to disidentify, and in not believing those thoughts and just being, the disidentification has taken place. You see? And then the person continues. The mind is the one that decides, right? Well, yeah, the mind or whatever is supposedly is projecting all of this is what decides. But again, right now, that's whatever seems to be projecting all this, because this never even happened, but don't try to trap this with the mind. It's now remembering or getting to know the nature of what is. But this question, it seems to comes again from an individual that is in a resignation mode. Okay, well, I guess the mind decides. No, the mind decides, but let's not go there. Let's just make it simple. And the simplicity of this is, if you don't identify with any meaning or any thoughts that the mind is trying to conjure up, you're resting in beingness, and you don't need to disidentify because you already are. This is where these videos are pointing to. This is why it is obvious, but it's so easily overlooked. By what? By the sense of identity, who on top of that adds a thought. Identity is the person that thinks that I am, that thinks that is feeling all these things, and now is labeling all these things and judging them. But in reality, I simply am, and you rest in what is. Then he continues. This I can do nothing about it at this point. This idea that we don't have free will would apply, right? Well, yeah, but again, let's not get caught up in that. Let's just keep it simple, because that's the mind now somehow trying to justify, okay, well, I guess there's nothing I can do. Don't worry about it. Right now, if you don't identify with the content of the mind, you're at peace, you're free. This is where this is pointing to. And finally says, we can only have the will to surrender to not knowing at every moment and trust, practicing the famous forgiveness. Well, forgiveness is a term that is used on A Course in Miracles. Course in Miracles, forgiveness does absolutely nothing, simply observe and judges not, doesn't try to change anything to accommodate to what it wishes. So forgiveness, again, according to the Course in Miracles, is resting in beingness, in not knowing. But again, the way I see this structured is talking from the perspective of what can I practice to let go of anxiety. We're not here to trying to fix or trying to let go of anything in terms of something that goes away. No, we're just pointing to what is in spite of what may be happening. So one thing is believing I'm this individual who's now feeling this feeling that labels it anxiety, and on top of that is concerned about what that means or what could happen to me. That's one thing. And another thing is just resting in beingness, and this particular feeling or sensation may appear but does not affect beingness, and therefore I experience what is referred to as the peace that passes all understanding. You see, we're not trying to fix anything. I'm just simply being in what is in spite of that sensation. And yes, as the human, as a human experience, if something can be done, of course, why not? This is not about a denial or saying, okay, I gotta feel this. And no, if you can do something about it, that's fine. Knowing simultaneously that you're not doing anything about it, it's just what is happening through you. So this is the space in which we rest always. So whatever happens, I know that life is experiencing through me, but it's not as a resignation of, okay, I guess I got nothing I can do. No, act as if you can do something. If an anxiety shows up, you might find yourself going, okay, okay. You see? It appears as if I'm doing something to get rid of anxiety. Nothing wrong with that. It's just what anybody would do. If you're hungry, do something so you can eat. It doesn't matter. But the bottom line is that whatever you do, you know beyond the shadow of a doubt that it's not you doing, it's just what happens. Because the investigation, the recognition that I am is already in place. And when that recognition is in place, all these questions go out the window. Actually, literally, all questions goes out the window. Except practical question. How do I get to the supermarket? You go walk 2 blocks and make a left. Or how do I fix this thing? Okay, you can put this thing over here. These are practical stuff, but the psychological stuff that I'm talking about is no longer an issue. Now you see that you simply are. And in this are-ness or isness, whatever you want to label it, again, we still use these terms, it's just what is. So, anxiety happened. Okay, it's what is. Doesn't mean anything. You don't let the mind try to run with it with any stories. You just simply see it and you feel it, and that's it. And then you feel the sensation, and then you see how the mind acts or doesn't do. Let me give an example. When I was in Mexico, I was taking a flight and I had an anxiety attack. I was remembering that I was sitting on the plane, and I began to have this anxiety attack. And I saw how the mind wanted for a moment to leave the plane, not in the air. I was still on the ground. And that's what was happening, And in the same time, what I was doing is that, okay, just being. At the beginning, it was a little overwhelming, so I began to distract myself reading the something or whatever. But I stayed with it, and then it's just like I blast through that, and then the airplane takes off. The airplane, pulled out and takes off, and end of story. Nothing else happened. Everything was fine. But you see, that was an experience that happened, and that's it. You see, I wasn't trying to. In other words, I knew that this is just what's happening, and I also knew that if I had to get off the plane, well, life would lead me to get off the plane, but I didn't find myself getting off the plane because that is not what was written in the script. But you see what I'm pointing to? Right now, this video is being filmed. Am I choosing to film this video, or this is just what happens? You see, I don't even have to go there. I just see how life, again, I say I because I don't know what other word to use. I could say this instrument is seeing life unfolding. That's why at the end of the video I say this is what it was inspired by this instrument. It's just a way of trying to keep coherence, with the message. But in reality, I could have said this is the message that it was inspired through me. But again, it doesn't matter. Right now, I could say that I chose to do this video, but in reality, this is just what happens. And all I do, again, you see, what can I tell you? All I do is observe life happening, or this instrument observes life happening. And if a sensation appears that may seem to be anxiety, there's no need to make a story around it. It's just what is. And if the anxiety is very overwhelming that I find myself calling a doctor, then I find myself calling a doctor because that is what happens. But again, Now there's a recognition, there's awareness that is. And again, at the beginning of the question, the person talks about when things get desperate, when you're limited on all sides. Again, things don't get desperate. Things are. Desperation is when the mind tries to interpret the situations, try to make a story around it based upon who I think I am. But if you simply are, tell me what things could happen in your life that could get desperate. Come on, make up a story and you'll find you can find anything. Well, I don't know. What if I don't have any money and I don't know how I'm going to eat? Well, you see, these are stories. These are stories and speculations. How am I going to survive? These are stories. All you know is that you are present. And in that presence that you are, life unfolds. And then you can see how life takes care of itself and does what it needs to do. Then nothing is desperate. Everything is what is. Life is unfolding. Sensations appear, so and you experience them, and then you see how they come and they go. But without the story of the mind, there's no suffering. All that there is you're experiencing. Sometimes there's pain, sometimes could be very intense, and pleasure, and it could be very intense, but without the story, it's just what is. You see, the pleasurable ones, we want to hang on to them, but the painful ones, we don't want to hang on to them. We want to let go of that. We want to practice this spirituality when we're in pain, but not when we're experiencing pleasure. I have a very good friend that, he sent me sometimes these messages. Look, Nick, look what is happening to me. I'm desperate and everything. And we talk about this and everything, and I have to be very conscious and very kind to him, not to tell him that, look, you just don't want peace. That's all there is to it. But he's not really just not ready to hear that. So when he's desperate, he wants help. You see, it's like everybody, when they have a problem, they go to church because they want God to solve their problems, but they never go to church because they really want to know God. You see the difference? When things are going well, forget about God. Who cares? But when things are going bad, that's what I want things. Well, same with these videos. If people want to, when things are going horrible, they want to listen that I am and resting beingness. But when the candy shows up, when the world throws a candy and they forget about all this, and now they want to go with the candy. Does that mean you cannot enjoy the candies in the world? Of course you can. I do enjoy them fully. I'm not having any issue with that. But while I'm enjoying the candy, I remember that I am. See, I don't let go. I just don't identify more with the content of the mind. Not because I am doing it. I'm not anything special. It's because that is what happens to this instrument. What can I tell you? When I find myself running and listening to music, for example, in that moment I enjoy fully the music, I enjoy fully the run, simultaneously that may be the last time I'll ever run. You see? And that's fine. It's the moment. When a fantasy comes about a possible future, I can see it, but I don't hang on to it. I don't pursue it. I just see it as what is. Because I know that if that is supposed to happen, life will inspire this instrument to do something about it, and that will take place. But in the end, all that there is this present moment experience. And that's it. This present moment experience without any kind of mind interpretation, then is just what is. And then if a feeling or a sensation shows up that may look like, I don't even label it anxiety. I just see, wait, this is what it is. But once again, because it's a total acceptance of what is, I'm not in resistance to life. This question shows someone that seems to be in resistance to life. And if you're in resistance to life, of course, every feeling and sensation that comes up will be multiplied. But if you see life as it is, then that's fine. It's just what happens. End of story. You see? And that's where these videos are pointing to. So that's why I always say, it doesn't matter what's going on in your life right now. I'm not trying to be disrespectful or anything. I'm just pointing to a possibility for you to observe, for you to explore. And it's this. Right now, whatever seems to be happening in your life, sensations, feelings, whatever, it doesn't matter, thoughts, situation, it doesn't matter. Even when you think that there's no way out, that's fine. We're not trying to find a way out here. We're resting in beingness in which there's no need to way out because you are already free. You see? So right now, if you don't identify with any thoughts, right now, just right now, any thoughts that is trying to interpret your present experience, just don't identify with them. They will be there. That's fine. That's life. Those thoughts are happening all the time, but just be. You see, rest in that beingness. You see? Right now, if you don't identify with any thoughts, you see what remains. Don't answer me. If you answer me, you miss the mark, because that's still the mind. I'm just pointing to what is. This is it. And there, in that isness, even if a sensation that you may label an anxiety might be there, it's just what is, not a problem. Because the mind is not trying to make a story around it. Because in the end, what this is pointing to is that it's not even a you that is here. The seeming personal you is just what is. And this is what these videos are pointing to. That's it. Nothing else. It's not about solving problems. If problem seems to be solved, well, that's part of the script. Doesn't matter. But you are. You see? Feelings will appear, sensations will appear. That's what it appears to be, life experience. But you remain, you are, and this is what this is all about. And now, well, all sensations will appear, or circumstances will appear. Everything will seem to appear and disappear, but you remain. See? And now this question again immediately drops away, falls by the wayside, because it makes no sense. None of those questions make any sense anymore. You see life happening from the moment you wake up in the morning throughout the whole day until you go to sleep. It's just simply a constant movement of the energy that may be taking different shapes and forms, but it's just movement, and you remain as a space in which movement seems to appear and disappear, you see? And that's life. And you'll experience whatever experiences you're supposed to have in this seeming journey. The difference is that you will not suffer them. You will not be in resistance to them. You will not be fighting them. You simply live. And then until the last breath, which we don't know. But that's how you experience the peace that passes all understanding. That's how you live at peace. That's how you live happily. You see? And that experience, you're having it right now. That's what I say. If you don't identify with the content of the mind right now, you don't want things to be different, you don't want to change things or whatever. If it's a very strong physical pain, you may find yourself doing something about it if it's possible. But even with that, right now, if you live in a total acceptance of what is, there's no suffering whatsoever. And the absence of suffering is what is referred to as peace, also known as happiness. It's not you're laughing all the time, oh, I'm so happy. No. You're happy because you are. That's it. And sometimes in that happiness, they may appear laughter, and sometimes it doesn't. But that doesn't in any way, shape, or form affect the happiness or the peace, which happiness and peace are synonymous, in which you rest. And that's how you live happily ever after. Because what would need to be different? What would have to change if you already are? We can even take the label, you're happy. You simply are. And that are-ness, again, is happiness, is peace, is what is. Right now, let's put it to the test. Again, this is not theory. I'm not here to give you theory or something for the future. No, right now. You don't have to close your eyes. I don't want you to turn this to something special. Right now, as you're looking at me in the camera, or whatever you're looking at, as you're looking at this image, if you're looking at it or listening, doesn't matter. Right now, don't identify any thought. Don't believe any thoughts. Right now, just don't believe them. Let them be. That's fine. Don't believe them. You see, even if you have a sensation that may used to label it or wanted to label anxiety or something, right now, just don't believe any thoughts, anything, and what remains. See, what remains. That's it. Don't answer. Just rest there. This is all what this is about. That's it. That's it. And that's how you are always, no matter what. No matter what appears to be on the surface, you are. You rest as that. which is what you are. Just be. That's it. That's it. Nothing else, you see. Your resting beingness. That's it. Beautiful. You see. And that's all. And now, from that beingness which you are, see how life unfolds, and you will do whatever you need to do. If you have to take the kids to school, you take the kids to school. If you have to make breakfast for the family or for yourself, you do so. If you have to go to work, you go to work. You do everything you do. Nothing is going to change except the attitude that now is being brought into the experience because you're not identified with the content of the mind. You see? That's why in Zen it says, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. What does it mean? Before enlightenment, you do whatever you're doing. And after enlightenment, you still do whatever you're doing. The only thing that changes is the attitude. You see, it's not enlightenment like the mind trying to sell it to you. The mind says enlightenment means you're going to be in bliss forever, or you're going to see lights or something special is going to happen. No. Enlightenment implies don't believe your thoughts. That's what enlightenment implies according to these videos. You see, according to what life is letting me to share, because that is what happens in my script. Before you used to believe the thought, fear, anxiety. You see, now you don't believe the thought. Boom, that's the enlightenment. And the fear and anxiety all of a sudden loses its power. And you notice that you still do the same thing. You see, nothing is going to change necessarily. The only thing is that the way it's perceived or seen or interpreted, if anything, it completely dissolves. And that's how you live in peace. That is the rest in peace that they put in tombstones, not realizing that the invitation is you can rest in peace right now until it's time to let go of the body. And these are the invitations in this video, and you have access to that right now, right this moment, in spite of what may be happening. So that's why I always wish everyone to rest in peace, in a real good sense, not in a sense of I want you to die. Technically speaking, the false self, with sense of identity would die, but what remains is life, which you are, even when you still appear to be a body that does things. But now you do it with a smile in your face, you see, because now you know who you are, and you see through the veil of illusion, through the veil of thought. Now you are experiencing the peace that passes all understanding. You are at peace. You are happy because you simply are. Well, this is inspiration that came again through this instrument, or I could say through me. It doesn't matter. I hope you enjoy it or it serves you. And as always, may peace permeate the mind so that love can be extended.